there for this, half the day, or not half the day, but, a couple of periods because this thing got rained out. And so I'm sitting there and we're all looking around. And so it's a typical cafeteria. There's a stage and there was a grand piano on the stage. And I had learned to play the guitar. I taught myself to play the guitar, and then I taught myself to play the guitar on the piano. Does anybody know what it means to learn to play the guitar on the piano? Let me explain it to you. You don't know how to read music and you can't play the melodies, but you're nodding, you know what I'm talking about? So you play an octave in the left hand, that's like boom, 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 that's like the bass, and then you just play chords with your right hand. And I learned to play, I could play any song that I'd heard. I had a great year. I didn't know how to read music, so I got up on the stage and I just started playing the piano. And of course it's loud and people came up around the piano, people I didn't know because I didn't know anybody because I didn't like anybody, nobody liked me. And so, and it was mostly girls. So this was like a win, right? And so they would ask for a song and I could pretty much play anything, not well, but well enough that everybody's singing. And suddenly I found my place in this world, right? Because there was something I was good at and I was liked and I liked being liked. And so I graduated from high school. I decided this is what I'm gonna do the rest of my life because I liked it and people liked it, that I liked it and I was good and I was getting better. And so I decided to major in music, went to Georgia State University, and I decided to be a music major. And so I did that first semester and second semester where you do all the stuff you have to do. And then I was gonna get into the core. And so I went to the music department and I thought I'm gonna find somebody, maybe I'll try out to be the pianist in the jazz band. Now understand, I could not read music, but that wasn't gonna get in my way because I could just listen to it and learn it and fake it. That was gonna be my plan. And if you know anything about music, you know how far that would have gotten me majoring in music at a university. So I'll never forget this. I was I don't know what the school's like now, it was a few years ago. So I'm in the basement and they all have these practice rooms with all these little studios with pianos. And I'm walking down the hall trying to find somebody to talk to. And I hear this jazz piano music that's like otherworldly. Like I'm listening, it's echoing down the halls. I'm thinking, what in the world? And I was hoping it was a recording. And there wasn't actually somebody at Georgia State University that could play that well, unless perhaps it was a teacher. And I go around a corner and there's some students standing out in the hall looking in this little practice room, and I get behind them and I look in and the room is full and there's a grand piano in there and there's a guy in there, I found out later his name is Jerome, and he was like, it was like butter, it was like magic, it was like, I think I will change my major. And I did. Because I could never be that good, and if I'm never gonna be that good, I'm never gonna make it, and it's just not gonna go well for me. So, moral of the story is, and you know this, and I'm just gonna put some words around some stuff that you already know. There is always somebody with more, right? You know this, right? There is always someone who is richer, who is skinnier, who is smarter, who is hipper, who is more talented-er, or their girlfriend is prettier, or their boyfriend is cuter, or their job is better-er. I mean, everywhere you look, whatever you wanna do, whatever you wanna be good at, whatever you think you're good at, and whatever you think you've accomplished, there's always somebody with more-er. So what we do, or what I did, I shouldn't put this on you, maybe it's just me. What I did is I looked around for people with less-er. So because when I was with people who had less-er than my-er, then I felt superior-er. And we all wanna feel like we kinda got it going on and we wanna feel a little bit superior. So this becomes a dynamic that we live with, and I don't think it ever goes away. And then there's some of us, and this isn't me so much, or maybe it is, but I don't know if I wanna go this far in public confession, but there's some of us that don't even wanna be an We wanna be an est. We wanna be the rich est. I wanna be the smart est. You wanna be the healthy est. You wanna be the cute est. You wanna be the skinny est. You wanna be the pretty est. You wanna be the retweeted est, okay? You want an est, right? So the moral of the story is there's just no win. There's never, ever, ever any win in comparison. You may have heard this before. You may have heard me say this before. There's just no win in comparison. In fact, comparison is what puts the dis in discontentment. And discontentment fueled by comparison, as we're gonna see in a few minutes, and as all of us already have a story, this isn't new information, discontentment fueled by comparison is actually very dangerous. Okay, some of you have consumer debt because you stared at somebody else's lifestyle for too long, didn't you? Some of you have consumer debt because you stared at what somebody else drives for too long. Some of you have consumer debt because you visited their house. You should have never visited their house, because when you went back to your house, you kind of walked around like this, like, man, these 8-foot ceilings, I feel like they're coming down on me. I need 10 or 12-foot ceilings, and you went out and got yourself another mortgage, and now you got all this debt. And the reason, and you hate it. I mean, we all hate debt. That's just the worst thing to have to live with. It just seeps into all of our relationships. Money is kind of weird in that way. Money becomes emotional when you owe money. You've learned that. We've all learned that as adults. But unfortunately, you've lived long enough to experience what happens when you stare at what other people have that you don't have. It becomes very dangerous. It becomes dangerous relationally, becomes dangerous. I mean, some of you are dieting yourself to death. Some of you are working yourself to death. Some of you are studying yourself to death. And what's driving you, you tell yourself, well, I'm just trying to maximize my potential. That's a good thing, to maximize your potential. But unfortunately, we're trying to maximize somebody else's potential that doesn't even know we're competing with them. And oftentimes we're killing ourselves financially, relationally, emotionally. It goes on and on and on. And it's because we live in a world, obviously, where we know what everybody else has and we know what everybody else drives. And then it gets really weird relationally, like I experienced in high school and with a couple of groups of people or types of people, I've really struggled my whole life. And I'm old enough and mature enough to know now it's my issue, not theirs. But this whole comparison thing, this will put you at odds with people that you know you'll never be like, that you know you'll never be as much as whatever it is you want to be as that they are as, that you just aren't going to be able to measure up to. So we do what I did in high school. We don't outgrow this. We kind of shrink back and we create reasons why they're not okay. The problem is they're okay. It's just that we're not okay. And you find yourself not being able to get along with certain kinds of people who remind you of who you'll never be and what you'll never look like and who you'll never marry and what you'll never do in your future. They got your job. They're living your dream and you're just miserable. And then again, because of the world we live in, and this isn't gonna change, so please don't hear me about to give you the solution to this. I just want you to feel horrible about yourself, and then we'll sing a song. This is church, right? I mean, that's what you do. You just feel bad about yourself. That's the goal. Then you go home and go, I didn't learn anything, but at least we all have the same problem. So anyway, I want to give you a way forward, but the world we live in, I'm like you. I live on a laptop, or I live on my thumbs, and every browser reminds me of what I don't have. Every website, even though I'm not even looking, right? Everybody's tracking us. The other day, Sandra and I were talking about Uber, and we were saying, she says, I wonder, I'm not making this up. She says, I wonder if there's such thing as an Uber gift card. I promise you, on both of our phones, on my iPad and her phone, ads started showing up for you can buy a gift card for Uber. I said, you hear those stories and we laugh like, they're not that efficient. I'm telling you, unbelievable, right? So everywhere you look, you're reminded of what you don't look like. You're reminded of where you don't work out. You're reminded that there is not enough shiplap in the world to make you happy, right? We all know this. And now the worst thing, I wasn't an Instagram person, and again, this is how this works. All my preacher friends, because I'm a pastor and pastor of a large church. So I have friends who are pastors of large churches. And, I had more Twitter followers than them. It doesn't really matter. I don't really look. But they had way more Instagram followers than me. One day Sandra says, so-and-so has 150,000 Instagram followers. I'm like, what? I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. And then now I'm like thinking about this all the time. And God in heaven's going, what? I called you to do, and what do you, and now even on Instagram, I'm trying to, be sane, but it's like now they're advertising stuff on, it's just everywhere. So the thing is, this isn't going away, and the point of the message isn't that culture's bad and we should need to abandon society and all come together and, live in a commune. That's not it. It's not going away. This is not a problem that can be solved, right? And then there's this, and then I'll try to get to something practical. Then there's the whisper. I don't know what else to call it. You might have a better name for this than me. I just call it the whisper. There's this voice. It sounds a lot like my voice. I don't know what your voice sounds like. There's this whisper that basically just says, you need what they have to be respectable, acceptable, and lovable. That's kind of the moral of the culture story, right? That you need, it's a whisper. Sounds like my voice, but it's a whisper, it's in my head. You need what they have to be respectable, acceptable, and lovable. And I've lived long enough to know this. Let me tell you something about they, okay? Let me tell you something about they. They, whoever they are for you, whether it's just images, it's people on browsers, or it's people that you know, and they have, and you need to have, they actually have the same voice in their head whispering the same thing. Because no matter what you have or what you've accomplished, there's no win in comparison. It never leads anywhere. In fact, the wisest man who ever lived, Solomon, who had it all, done it all, been there, done that, the wisest man who ever lived, he just summarized it this way. He said this. He wrote this: envy rots the bones. Wow, that's extreme. Envy rots the bones. So the bottom line for our time together is simply this: knock it off, okay? Just stop doing that, right? If only it were that easy. And I wish I could come out here tonight and say, let me tell you how this will never affect you again. I can't tell you how to make it go away, but I do want to tell you how to manage this tension, because it's not going away. But it won't go away, but it does not have to control you. And it does not have to drive you. And as I was preparing for our time tonight, honestly, I found myself in sort of devotional mode going, God, I am so glad I'm talking about this, because I need a reminder. Because even though I'm not in high school anymore, there are just other versions of the same thing, and it has the potential to ruin our lives. It has the potential to drive us crazy financially. It has the potential to make us less generous. Because as long as I'm trying to keep up with people I can't keep up with, I don't have any margin to give to other people. And I don't have margin to support the things that I want to support, because I'm trying to keep up with people that don't even know I'm trying to keep up with them. So this isn't a problem that is ever solved, but this is a tension that we all have to learn to manage, especially if you're a Christian, especially if you're a Jesus follower, because this intersects with your relationship, with your Heavenly Father, who has called you. This is an amazing thought. We're not gonna develop it, but it's just an amazing thought. Who called you, get this, according to His purpose. Wow, what if you missed God's purpose for your life because you were trying to keep up with a culture that's not even a thing, it's a myth? We're gonna see a word in just a minute that Solomon's gonna give us that helps us kind of sort of personify this ghost, this vapor, this thing, this illusion that we all chase. This thing that has the potential to steal the joy of life. Not a problem to be solved. So what I wanna do in our few minutes that's left is my goal is to give you a mental line of defense. I know that sounds kind of technical and weird, a mental line of defense. In other words, a place that you can go mentally when you start drifting toward envy or discontentment emotionally. Because for most of this, even though it starts right here with our eyes or our ears, but generally our eyes, it gets emotional real quickly. Suddenly we're feeling behind, we're feeling unloved, we're feeling ugly, we're feeling like, we're not keeping up. We're feeling like we're not everything we ought to be and everything everybody expects us to be. So what I wanna do tonight is I just wanna give you a couple of phrases that I hope that you will kind of drive deep down into your soul. And as you experience the tug, as you hear the whisper, and you're gonna hear it the rest of your life just like I am, that we would have a place to go mentally to tell ourselves something that is so true and so instructional that it may keep you between the guardrails. And if you're a Christian, it may help direct you toward God's purpose for your life. So back to the wisest guy that ever lived. He's jumping right into a little bit of a narrative, and he's kind of telling us what he's seen. He's an old man now, and he's been there, done that. He's so wealthy. Solomon was so wealthy. He'd accomplished so much. So he has all this life experience, and he's downloading his life experience for people like us who have less life experience and will never experience life like he's experienced it. Because part of the allure of culture is, if only I had, if only I drove, if only I looked, if only I married. And Solomon says to us, hey, been there, drove it, lived in it, married it, looked like it, bought it, sold it, been there, whatever your deal is, I've done that. And so let me tell you what I've learned through my years of having been there and done that as it relates to the whisper, if only, if only, if only. So here's what he says. He says, and I saw, he's talking about something he saw in the past, and I saw that all toil, all work, and all achievement, all you goal setters, all toil and all achievement spring from one person's envy of another. It's like, what? He goes, yep, I've seen it. I know what's happening out there. This isn't new. This is 3,000 years old at least and older. In other words, he says, I looked around and I realized everybody is simply competing. Everybody is determining, this is shocking, this is embarrassing because this is so true. Everybody is determining where they are based on where everybody else is. Everybody is determining, to speak of it in a way that he would, that everybody, I look around and I notice that everybody is determining where they are based on where other people are. And then he says this too is meaningless. And then he gives us our phrase. Then he gives us this mental image. He gives us a phrase that I want you to memorize. I just want this to become part of your mental language. You know what a mental language is? It's stuff you don't necessarily say out loud. You just think it. And by the way, there are things that you should just think. They should never come out of your mouth. Okay, just a little lesson. Honesty is not saying everything that's true. That's foolish. You will have no friends. Honesty is not saying everything that's true. Honesty is just making sure that what you say is true. So are there some true things you should never say? But anyway, so I want to give you something that you say to yourself, or you may need to say out loud, but here's the phrase. This is so powerful. So I'm going to read the whole verse and then I'm going to add this last part. And I saw that all toil and all achievement spring from one person's envy of another. This too is meaningless. And here's the phrase, a chasing after the wind. Isn't that powerful? A chasing after the wind. It's endless. It's pointless. There is no finish line. There is no trophy because there is no winner. And there is no peace. There's just not arg, dissatisfaction, guaranteed. Dissatisfaction, guaranteed, because comparison is what puts the dis in discontentment, and discontentment, dissatisfaction, guaranteed. It steals the joy, and here's the tragedy. It steals the joy from our accomplishments. It steals the joy from what we have done. It steals the joy from the goals that we have set and have accomplished because somebody else has accomplished more, because somebody else has more. So when you catch yourself, and you know what? Here's the thing. You're gonna catch yourself before you even leave this auditorium. You're gonna catch yourself, before this hour is out. But when you catch yourself looking, oh man, I wish I had hair like that. Wish I had skin like that. That she looks so good and I wouldn't look good in that. He looks so good in that. I'm not even gonna try. When you catch yourself looking, when you catch yourself drifting, when you catch yourself looking and drifting in somebody else's direction, when you catch yourself drifting over into someone else's lane, that's when you say to yourself, and for some of us, I think we should say it out loud. Not loud enough for everybody else to hear, but just loud enough to stop us. That's when we say, that's chasing the wind. That's chasing the wind. No. I'm not gonna buy that. That's just chasing the wind. Keep going. It's just chasing the wind. Chasing the wind. And I don't chase the wind. So I want us to say this out loud together, both of these phrases. You ready? Here we go. That's chasing the wind. One more time. That's chasing the wind. And I don't chase the wind. Do you? Come on. This isn't a Christian religious thing. This is just a thing. Do you want to spend the rest of your life chasing the wind? No. Why? Because there's no win in chasing the wind. There's no win in comparison. There's no trophy. There's no finish line. There's no, I did it. You did what? I don't know. I just did it. I know. There's no win, okay? There's always faster, cuter, smaller, younger, hipper, bigger. It's chasing the wind. And come on, I don't know you personally, but I know this. Your life is too valuable and your life is too short and your time is too valuable for you to waste any of it chasing the wind. So the moment those emotions, those feelings of inadequacy and I'm not rich enough and I didn't measure up to what my parents thought, all that stuff, whoa. That's chasing the wind, and I don't chase the wind. Now, fortunately, Solomon's not through because he knows there's another side of this and he knows what some of us are thinking. Because the whole idea of not chasing the wind is not an invitation to be passive. In fact, I remember Solomon wrote this. Solomon accomplished more than you will accomplish in your whole life. And I'm not trying to put you down. I'm just saying, like, he was the king of a nation, okay? He had endless resources. He built a temple. You can still, go see the base of the temple. I mean, he's an amazing person. So he wasn't passive. He wasn't like, just live and let live. It doesn't matter. You live today and gone tomorrow. I mean, he said some things like that in Ecclesiastes. But in terms of his life personally, he accomplished a great deal. So here's what he says. He says, now don't take this to an unhealthy extreme. Fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. Fools say, well, you know what? Since I can't keep up, since everybody's better than me, since everybody has more talent than me, since everybody had a better family, since everybody else, I'm just not even gonna try. Solomon says, no, only a fool does that. Being unproductive is not the answer. So he brings in this next verse, this is so powerful. It's like if you don't ever read the Bible, you should read the Bible. In fact, start with what Solomon wrote. If you're not a Christian, you're not into the Jesus thing, hey, Jesus wasn't born for a long time. Start with Solomon. He was just a king, and these are just wise sayings. It's just that they're found in the Bible, which is great. And here's what he says next. He says, so he brings these two extremes together. He's like, look, don't spend your life chasing the wind, and don't fold your hands and go, oh, well, why try? Don't spend your life chasing the wind and trying to keep up with people that don't even know you're trying to keep up with them, images on a screen. And at the same time, don't just throw up your hands and give up. And he brings them together in this next statement that's so powerful. Some of you perhaps just need to memorize this statement. He says this, better, I love this, better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Isn't that great? You're like, I don't even know what it means. I know, I'm gonna explain it in a minute, but it is great. So just but look at the imagery of this. He says, it's better to have one handful with tranquility, which rubs us the wrong way in our culture because our culture isn't about one, our culture is about two, our culture is about more. If I had four hands, I'd have four handfuls, I mean, it's all about more. He says, okay, I have more than all of you, so just shut up and listen for a second. I'm telling you, one handful with tranquility. One handful with tranquility is better than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Tranquility means satisfaction. Tranquility means you drive home at night and you go into your apartment or you go into your house and you're fine. Tranquility means you visit your friend or your older brother or even your younger brother or your older sister or younger sister, and they live in this big old house, and they got a gate. Woo, you got a gate, Hey, can I come in? It's your brother, and they have to let you in their gate, Woo, And then you drive home to wherever you live, and you know what tranquility is? Tranquility is, I'm so happy for them, and it doesn't bother me. I'm so happy for them. It doesn't bother me. I'm so happy for her. Doesn't bother me. You got into your grad school, that's so great. And you got into the school I wanted to go to. You know what? Once upon a time that would have bothered me so much. I'm not even sure we could be friends, but I've learned that one handful with tranquility is better than two handfuls of striving and chasing at the wind. Here's the thing. We assume more is better. That's what we're taught every single day. We assume more is better, but chasing more always leaves us wanting more. So here's his point. This is why it's so powerful. Less is actually more when the less you hold is what you were created for. That less is actually more when the less you hold is what you were designed, what you were created for, what you were born to do. Better one handful with tranquility than grasping and striving and pretending and competing. Then he goes on. He says, let me tell you something else I saw while we're talking about it. This is so great. Again, he said, I saw something meaningless under the sun. Well, tell us what it is. This is fascinating, Solomon. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother, to which we're like, so what? But see, in this culture, if you didn't have a son and you didn't have a brother, then you had no one to leave your estate to and your wealth to, or even if you didn't have much, you didn't have anybody to leave anything to, because in ancient times, women could not inherit anything. So here's a guy who's been working hard and has something to show for it, but he doesn't have anyone to leave it to. And then Solomon says this, there was no end to his toil. In other words, he was just getting after it. Yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. So he was working hard and he was getting more, but more leads to more and bigger leads to bigger and better leads to better. And he's just getting after it. And then he finally, this guy stops and asks a question that some of you have never asked. And I'm telling you, I wish I'd asked this question much earlier in my life. In fact, if I could sit down with you and you're, some of you are 15, 20, 30 years younger, 40 years younger than me. I don't know how old you are. I would say, you know what? If you'll begin to ask yourself this question early on, it will help you. You will learn to be content with one handful of tranquility. And you won't be content like you won't accomplish anything. You will accomplish all you were born to accomplish, but you'll do it with peace and tranquility. Because here's a question this guy forgot to ask that most of us forget to ask. And here's the question, it's so powerful. Solomon says, he forgot to ask, for whom am I toiling? He finally asked the question. I mean, he's been going on and on and on, year after year. And it's like he's going, wait a minute. Who am I doing this for? Who am I doing this with, and who am I doing this for? What am I trying to prove, and who am I trying to prove it to? Now, this is a hard question. And I had to wrestle this one to the ground many years ago. That's why I just would love, if we were sitting down over coffee, I would say, this is a really big deal. And the younger you are, the more powerful and the more time you have to live this out. But it's never too late. Because there's an answer to this question, whether you've asked the question or not, and whether you know the answer or not. There's an answer to the question, why are you doing this? Why are you striving? Why are you toiling? Why are you pushing? Why are you gritting your teeth? Why? Who is it for? And for some of you, do you know who it's for? You're competing with your brother. You're competing with a sister. Some of you are trying to live up to your mother's expectations. And let me just tell you something. I don't know your mother, but you'll never win with your mother. You won't. You know how I know? Because if you could have won, you would have won. If it's been going on year after year after year, and she's this, and you're just trying. Okay, why? Some of you are trying to please your father. Some of you are trying to make your father smile and finally give you that hug. And some of you, your father passed away. And you're still striving. And you've never stopped and asked this powerful question. Wait a minute. Why am I doing this? Who am I doing this for? Whose approval am I competing for? And do they even know? And do they even care? And would it even matter if they did? So here's a question, then we're moving on. For whom, to use his word, for whom are you toiling? And let me just give you a heads up. If you say, well, I'm doing it for me, probably not. Well, I'm just doing it for me, maybe. But before you just go there and move on, this is a question you need to wrestle to the ground. For whom are you toiling really? Because for some of you, when you are able to answer that question, it will free you up to be content with one handful of tranquility instead of two hands of if only, and when. He goes on. And why? This is so amazing. This is the same fictitious, this guy that Solomon knew that sort of represents, people, humanity. And why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This guy, Solomon says, the thing about this guy, he accomplished so much, he has no one to leave it to, and he's not even enjoying his stuff. He's so bound up with more stuff and chasing the wind. It's like, wait a minute, who am I doing this for? And why is it I'm not even enjoying the fruit of my labor? It's because he'd never answered the question, why am I doing this to begin with? And perhaps you aren't enjoying your life either. And let me tell you what, if you're not enjoying your life, no one else will, okay? If you're raising kids, if you're not enjoying your life, they're not enjoying your life. For some of you, I'm getting a little personal, the reason that your relationships are just kind of repeat, same thing, in the same way. If you're not enjoying your life, the people that you date aren't going to enjoy you. They're just not. If you're not enjoying your life, the people that are closest to your friends, they won't enjoy you either. They will sense your angst. In fact, they may have tried to tell you, and you're like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just ambitious. I'm just a goal setter. Well, no, you're something else, but I can't say that because Andy said don't say everything that's true. Just make sure what you say is true. So I'm not going to really tell you what, anyway. So, and then there's this, okay? Just to really, if you don't feel guilty enough or motivated enough, I hope you're motivated. Think about this. Isn't it true? I don't think you could argue with this. Somewhere in the world tonight, there are 1 billion people, or let's just be conservative. Somewhere in the world tonight are 500 million people that would look at your life and your circumstances and your body and where you live and what you drive and who you know, and they would consider you one of the luckiest people on earth. But you don't. And do you know why you don't? Because you don't know why you're toiling and striving, and you don't know who you're doing it for. One handful with peace and tranquility is so much better than 2 handfuls of grit and tension and a lack of peace. This too, he says, I mean, he's so honest. This too is meaningless. It's a miserable business. You will never find, you just have to trust me on this, or just figure it out for yourself, or think it through. You're smart, you know this. You will never be who you were born to be as long as you are looking over your shoulder at anybody else. Because the energy you expend and the energy I expend looking left and right and over my shoulder, that is energy God gave us to do what God has called us and created us to do. And if you're a Christian, as I said earlier, you'll never discover God's purpose for your life. You are so aware of God's purpose perhaps for other people's life, but you will never discover God's purpose for your life as long as you're distracted by someone else's success. Now, I grew up, as some of you know, I grew up with a very successful father, and in some circles, I grew up with a very famous father. And I had to figure this out for myself. And I wish I had asked some of these questions much earlier in my life, and I wish I had learned one handful of tranquility is so much better than 2 hands of striving and chasing after the wind. And I'll tell you somebody else who had to learn it in a similar way as well, somebody that all of you have heard of, and some of you know something about him, some of you know virtually nothing about him. His name's Joel Osteen, right? Joel Osteen's also a pastor. And I love Joel's story because maybe it's because I'm a preacher's kid and he was a preacher's kid, and he said something. I read his story, then I've only met him one time, and we had one conversation, and he was with a group, and he told his story, and I wrote something down. I'm gonna show you what he wrote down in just a minute. But his story, the 30-second version of his story is he dropped out of college and went back home to work for his dad editing video. His dad was a pastor on TV, and he would edit his dad's video. So that's what he did. He did not an extrovert, introvert, just wanted to edit video for his daddy, as he calls him, his daddy. And then his daddy got sick and was put in the hospital. They didn't have anybody to preach one Sunday. And so his family said, Joel, you need to preach. And he's like, I don't preach, I edit video. He'd never preached in his life. They said, no, you need to preach. And so his dad called him from the hospital, he said, and he said, Joel, I just need you to preach for me Sunday. Everybody will love you. You're my son. They'll understand. He's like, Daddy, I don't have any sermons. His dad said, okay, Joel, you just pick one of my sermons that you really like a lot and just re-preach that. He said, 2 days later, I called my dad in the hospital, said, Dad, I can't find any of your sermons that I really like a lot. Yeah. But he finally picked one and he preached one, and it was terrible. It was terrible. The next week, his father passed away. And his family came to him and said, Joel, we think God has his hand on you. You're to pastor and preach at this church. He's like, I preached one sermon and it was terrible. And Joel talked about how he tried to preach like his dad. He said, you're not gonna believe this. He said, I actually wore my father's shoes for the first few months that I preached, trying to figure this out. And then he said something I wrote down. And regardless of what you know about Joel Osteen, and regardless of what you think about Joel Osteen, I don't want you to miss this, because this is so powerful. In fact, this next statement is why you've heard of Joel Osteen. He worked for his dad in secret for 17 years. This is what he said. He said, then it dawned on me, I have to run my race. I can't run my daddy's race or any other preacher's race. And he's been running his race ever since. And here's why I tell you that story. Look up here. You have to learn to run your race and quit chasing the wind. Back to Solomon. Here's what he says. A heart, this is the entire statement that I gave you the second part of at the beginning. Solomon says this: a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. You cannot, I don't care how rich you are, poor you are, how good looking you are, where you live, who you're connected to, you cannot compare your way to peace. You cannot compare your way to peace. You cannot compare your way to tranquility. You can't win chasing the wind. God has given you a race to run. And you need to get in your lane, and you need to focus, and you need to stay there. Look to other people for inspiration and celebrate their success. You look to them for inspiration, but you don't look to them for imitation. When you see somebody knocking it out of the park, maybe somebody living your dream, somebody driving your car, somebody going to your school, getting your degree, you celebrate them. You say, I'm so happy for you, but I am running my race and I am staying in my lane. I'm not gonna waste an ounce of my energy resenting you. I'm not gonna waste an ounce of my life being jealous of you, because I'm running my race in the lane that God has put me in. Jordan Peterson in 12 Rules for Life, a fabulous book, he says it this way. I love this quote. He says, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. That is great advice, isn't it? If you've got to compare yourself to who you were yesterday, because if who you were yesterday is not as great as who you are today, then you're making progress.
This fragile feeling, a constant ache in my chest, like a glass heart beating, longing for a place to rest. Tired of masks, curated facades we show, yearning for a connection, someone to truly know. But the world keeps spinning, a dizzying, vibrant blur, and I'm holding on tight, trying not to fall further. Lost in the digital noise, searching for a signal clear. Can anybody hear me? Is there any solace here? Swiping through the emptiness, a kaleidoscope of lies, empty promises and filtered skies. Is this what it means to be alive in this digital age? Trapped in the reflection of our own self-made cage. This fragile feeling, a constant ache in my chest, like a glass heart beating, longing for a place to rest. Tired of masks, curated facades we show, yearning for a connection, someone to truly know. But the world keeps spinning, a dizzying, vibrant blur, and I'm holding on tight, trying not to fall further. Lost in the digital noise, searching for a signal clear. Can anybody hear me? Is there any solace here? Maybe the solace is within my own reflection, finding the strength to shatter this digital deception, to embrace the cracks, the flaws, the beauty unforeseen, and build myself up.